my name is Jen Rauch, and today I'm going to talk to you about a story that happened about a year ago. I was friends with a girl who was happily involved in her relationship. She would tell me about their, experiences and how much fun they were having, and eventually her stories started to change, and she started to change. She was previously, bubbly and happy, and she started to become detached, and she looked drained, and she just looked sad. I couldn't figure out what the change in her was. She had told me she was being abused by her boyfriend. As I start my speech, I think of her. Abuse is something that most teenagers and adults know about, but I find it paradoxical that not many people realize that it's happening to them. My goal is to bring to light the warning signs of abuse and the unfortunate realities of abusive relationships. Domestic abuse is a pattern of abusive behavior in an intimate or romantic relationship in which one person chooses to control the relationship by use of force, intimidation, or fear. And domestic violence includes physical abuse. Many types of abuse can occur in a relationship, including physical, emotional, sexual, and mental. Physical abuse is the use of force in a relationship. And examples other than just, pushing and slapping and kicking and, physical abuse, it can include using a weapon on you or driving too fast, holding someone captive, or keeping you away from getting medical care if you need it, or withholding medications. Many people ask if one-time instances constitute as physical abuse, and it doesn't necessarily mean you're for sure being abused, but it can lead to a warning sign of future abuse. Emotional abuse is also known as verbal abuse, and it's abuse that is aimed to chip away at your feelings of self-worth and independence. Victims feel like there's no way out of this kind of relationship, and these examples include degrading victims in front of their friends or name-calling, kind of like taking your statements out of context, or telling hurtful jokes to people about you or to you. Mental or physical abuse, for a lack of better terms, is kind of like playing mind games. Common examples of this include isolating your significant other from their family, or controlling every action of the victim, ignoring feelings, making threats, not breaking promises, not taking responsibility for their own actions. Sexual abuse is a situation where the victim feels forced to participate in degrading or forced sexual activity. And even if you're married or in a relationship, forced sex is still considered abuse. And common examples include forced sex, unwanted sex, forcing sex upon other people, refusing to use safe practices. And it's easy for me to stand here and explain the different types of abuse, but it's often hard to detect in your own relationship. And in your own relationship, if some warning signs include explosive behavior, extreme jealousy, controlling behavior, unrealistic expectations, forced sex or saying cruel and harmful things, making false accusations, extreme insecurity, constantly checking in on you, isolation and blaming others for their own faults. Abuse can happen to anyone. It's not a gender role or an ethnicity thing, or even sexual orientation. It can happen to anyone. And 1 in 4 women will experience domestic violence during their lifetime. Girls and women often experience it between 16 and 24. Women experience more than 4 million physical assaults and rapes because of their partners, and men are nearly victims of 3 million physical assaults. Every year, 1 in 3 women is a victim of homicide because of their partner. Every year, more than 3 million children witness domestic violence in their homes, and more than 60% of domestic violence happens within the house. Without help, girls who experience or witness any type of abuse in their household are more vulnerable as teens to be abused. And without help, boys who experience or witness domestic violence are more likely to be the abuser when they grow older. And this is the scary thing. Most of domestic violence incidents are never reported. Adult men and women are not the only ones who experience and are in abusive relationships. They occur among teens as well. 1 in 5 girls in high school is sexually or physically hurt by their partner. 1 in 3 teens experience some type of abuse in their romantic relationships. Only 33% of teens who have been in or known of a relationship that is abusive has reported it. And teen girls are 3 times more likely to experience violence than men. 25% of victims say that they've been isolated. More than half have compromised their own beliefs for their partner, and they think that's normal, and it's not. Teens report this dating abuse increasingly via your cell phone, through like constant calls or texts. 82% of parents who were informed of this abuse, they had no idea that abuse was going on in their house. And these statistics bring me back to my friend who had experienced a abusive relationship. Her boyfriend was verbally abusive, and he was psychologically abusive or mentally abusive. He would call her excessively. One night we were hanging out, and she received a call from her boyfriend, and since we were together, she didn't want to answer. And so over a span of 3 hours, he had called her 47 times and left 3 voicemails, all, yelling at her, saying that she was a bad person for not answering and talking to her while she was with me. Another night happened, and the same thing started happening. The calls were constant, and she decided to answer. And the first thing, before she could even get out hello, he was yelling at her, saying that she was a bad girlfriend and that she should always be answering him when she gets a call, and saying how she's replacing him with her friends. And these screaming, and it would end in screaming. These screaming matches would happen more often and more frequently when I was with her. And I had no idea what to do. As her friend, I wanted to help her, but I didn't really know how to help. And I could tell that she was in a lot of pain because she had no idea what to do. I'm not trying to say this story to scare people, but I'm trying to show how these experiences impact the victim. And as my friend, they may become depressed or anxious, and in some cases, they even become suicidal. They are anxious or afraid to please their partners, and they receive frequent and harassing phone calls from their significant other, like my friend. They may have frequent injuries or talk about their partner's temper or jealousy. They frequently miss social occasions or school because they're with their partner. They may be restricted from seeing their family or friends and rarely go in public without their partner. They may have a loss of self-confidence, which I noticed in my friend. She wasn't very confident and very depressed. They may be reluctant to come to the conclusion that they are being abused, and they may have a kind of a doubt that something's wrong with them instead of the person they're with. Many people don't understand why these victims, if they're feeling so poorly, why don't they just leave? And I thought that too. I didn't understand why she couldn't just get up and leave. And there are many theories for why this happened. One is learned helplessness, and it's that this helplessness and depression will be a response to their loss of their ability to control the situation. Victims learn to kind of be passive so that these instances and abusive occurrences will subside. They become more survival focused instead of escape focused, and they view others as not being able to help them, and they feel trapped. Traumatic bonding is another form or a theory. Traumatic bonding is saying that there's these strong emotional connections that form between the victim and the perpetrator during this abusive relationship, and it's due because of this imbalance of power that the controller versus the victim. And they feel worse about themselves as the abuser continues to gain power, and they start to feel relief that the abuse has stopped momentarily, and that they start clinging onto these hopes that these promises that things will end will actually end, and they don't. With the hope that abuse will stop and then a repeat of abusive behavior, the victim stays hoping things will change. The last theory is approach and avoidance. They want to approach the relationship thinking of the positives, but they don't think of the abuse. So they kind of brush over the fact that they're being hurt. And on average, the victims tend to leave and return 7 times before they actually leave and leave their partner. They become brainwashed through manipulation, and they are made to believe that everything their partner says is true, and the abuser is telling them that they're worthless without them, and so they're starting to believe that, yes, I am worthless without my significant other, and they're not in a good position to have the control to leave, because in their relationship they are powerless, so they can't seem to muster up the power themselves to leave their situation. Victims feel guilt, failure, embarrassment, humiliation, and they don't feel supported. And that's kind of why they don't leave. They don't have this self-confidence about themselves to get up and actively leave this relationship because their abuser is the one holding all of the control. Many victims feel torn between this desire to leave this abuse, but they hope that things will change because they do care about the person they're with. And that breaking that hope and breaking that connection is crucial to the survival of the victim. And by staying in the relationship, they are reinforcing this abusive behavior, which they often don't realize. If you are being abused, remember that you're not alone. This happens, and it's not your fault that you are being mistreated. You are not the cause of your partner's abusive behavior. You deserve to be treated with respect and you deserve a happy life. And people want to help you. That's the other thing. Many victims don't realize that people want to help because their abuser isn't helping them, so why should anyone else? If you're being abused, you need to develop an action plan, a safety plan, like calling 911 or contacting counselors or even getting legal help if you're married. You have to create a safety plan because your safety is what's most important. You have to first, to create a safety plan, you must identify what triggers this abuse and try to take precautions to protect yourself and seek help from friends or even professional or legal help. And this is what's most important. To leave, you have to start minimizing your time spent with them. Helping yourself is the hardest part. It's easy for me to stand here and say what to do and how to do it, but it's harder to actually do it. And I recognize that, but you have to stay strong, and you have to realize that it's one of the hardest things to leave an abusive relationship. And so as friends, help someone. Make sure they know that you're there to support them. If you know someone being abused, make sure you acknowledge that what they're going through is hard. Don't minimize what they're going through as oh, well, you'll get through it. No, you have to be there to support them. They need you more than ever. Don't abandon them. When my friend told me about her abuse, I was unsure of what to do. I felt confused. I felt like I was just some dumb teenager. What do I know? And I could tell she needed my help, and she was tired and she was drained. And so I advised her to talk to her parents. And after months of this continuing abuse and me trying to support her and help her and being a crying shoulder, she finally did talk to her parents, and the abuse did subside. And this was very important, and I was very lucky. Victims don't disclose in their abuse because sometimes they don't know they're being abused or they're ashamed of it. So if someone does tell you, know that they trust you and they want help. Abusive relationships is a serious, serious thing, and it leaves serious consequences on the victim. I think of her and my friend and what she went through, and she was lucky. She was able to leave her unhealthy relationship, but some people aren't that lucky. If you know someone being abused, know that there's help, and make sure to help them. Make sure you know that they're helpless and they need someone to guide them. If you are being abused, know that you're not alone and that you can get through this. The abuse is never, ever your fault. So help change the statistics. I encourage all of you to speak up, speak out, and make a difference for the victims of domestic abuse. Thank you.